to meet with Mr. Piper, but the boat had to turn back.
With Mr. Ali?
You say this at paragraph 10. The third sentence, we were on Paria's boat heading ashore when Dexter messaged from the barge that they were hearing knocking noises coming from the chamber. We turned around to return to the berth. All right? Now, immediately before that, you're talking, you say Mr. Ali left for shore to secure additional resources at approximately 15:40 hours, so that's 3:40. About 20 minutes later, so that's 4 p.m., I was actioning the rescue plan. I was told that I had to go ashore to a meeting with Mr. Piper. Now, in fairness to you, you don't actually fix a time there. But what I would like to suggest to you is that you weren't actually summoned to go to shore to meet with Mr. Piper until after 5 p.m., shortly after 5 p.m.
No. I was before, but I didn't want to leave the site.
Okay.
No, you're going to have to do better with the microphone, please.
Oh,
if necessary, just move the whole thing over a little bit further. That's it. Move your pen out of the way and pull that. That's it. You've got it. Right. So you said, I think you said no. That's not correct. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Right.
Just so we can make clear, because Mr. Piper will come and give evidence. Who do you say summoned you to go to meet with Mr. Piper? Do you recall?
Pardon?
Do you recall the name of the person who told you you had to go to meet with Mr. Piper?
I remember Dexter coming to me and telling me that Colin Piper requested for me to come ashore to meet with him.
I see. So that's just based on what Dexter said to you. Nobody from Paria told you directly that you had to come to shore to meet with Mr. Piper.
Someone from Paria, but I can't recall their name. I can't.
Okay, and you can't recall the time
No.
they told you. Okay, that's fine. Now, there was a toolbox meeting held on the 25th of February. We heard evidence from other witnesses about it. But as I read your statement, you tell us you were at that toolbox meeting, yes?
Correct.
You say it happened at 8:30, but can that be an error? Because from what we've seen, the documents suggest the meeting was held at 9:15 and another one held at 9:30.
Yeah, it could be an error.
Yeah, okay, all right. Now, at that meeting, am I right that your primary concern would have really been diving operations?
Yeah.
Yeah? And do you say somewhere in your statement, I believe, that there was a general safety discussion with respect to scope of works for that day? Right? Would it be fairly accurate to say that the discussion at that meeting was very general in nature, very high level?
Correct.
Yes? And I want to suggest to you, because some witnesses have given this evidence, but that there was no discussion about the removal of the plugs on that day at the meeting.
Nothing, right?
Is that correct? Would you accept that?
No.
Okay, so your evidence is that there was discussion about that.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm suggesting to you that that is not in fact the case, that there was no discussion about it on that day. Yes?
If that's your suggestion, yeah.
Right. Okay. You don't treat with that item specifically in your witness statement, do you? In either of them?
No.
Okay. So you're telling us, at least today for the first time, that that's the case. You accept that?
Telling you.
You're telling us today,
right, that
that's the first time, or today rather, is the first time that you've actually said that there was a discussion.
That there was? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. The last area I want to take you to concerns the events of Sunday, the 27th of February. Now, you deal with this issue at paragraphs 60.
I think before you move on, in fairness, Mr. Mutu, he does raise it, might be slightly ambiguous, but he does raise the issue of a discussion. in relation to the removal of the riser. If you go to paragraph 15 of his supplementary statement, he sets out what the job scope was for the 25th of February. And then at 17, he says, at the toolbox, all the persons involved in the entire job gathered on the barge. The meeting was conducted by Mr. Dill Paul. We discussed the job scope for the day. Whoever had any concerns or questions had a chance to discuss. There was general safety discussion with the scope works for that day. I cannot recall which Paria persons were present at the toolbox meeting. As I say, I accept it might be slightly ambiguous, but to say there was no mention of it at all is probably not entirely fair. You could perhaps ask him if that's what he meant by it.
No, I accept the correction. I accept the correction. Now, on the events of Sunday, the 27th, you deal with that at paragraph 60 to 67 of your witness statement. Now, you talk about 2 meetings having occurred on that day. You recall?
Yep.
Yeah. I want to suggest to you that by the time you went to the first meeting, well, let me ask you this. By the time you went to the first meeting, I imagine you had spoken to Kazim Ali Sr. extensively about the incident in general and about rescue plans. Would that be correct?
Correct.
And at the time that you both went to that meeting, the first meeting on Sunday, I want to suggest to you that LMCS's attitude was that by that time the divers had already been lost.
Not true.
Okay. Now you talk about having been asked at the first meeting to go back and do a method statement and risk assessment for rescue operation. Yes?
Yeah, correct.
I want to take you to look at the submissions bundle, which is at page 1067 of that bundle. I'm working off the electronic version. 6-7. I think I have one. I think it's one. Sorry, it's 10167. Forgive me. Can that be right? I'm not sure that I have the right. I'm not sure that I have the right. I've been given the right reference. Can I have one moment, please?
Might be able to help you.
I'm looking for the email of the 27th of February.
Yes, we did look at that already once. It's on the screen now.
Yes.
What is the page number? That is 10167. We really have that many pages in this.
It's bundle of submissions. Okay, right. So I was right. Thank you. Thank you. Have you seen this email before?
No.
Okay. You won't dispute that it's an email from Mr. Kazim Ali to Mr. Paul Yearwood, sent on the 27th of February at 2:20 p.m., right?
Correct.
And this email was after you'd had the first meeting on the morning.
Correct.
Yes? And this is this email follows what you say was a discussion about a method, the need for a method statement and a risk assessment for a rescue operation. Yes? And if I ask the operator if they could just go down the screen a bit, you will see, you should see, it's not on this document. Stop. Oh, sorry, the email, the body of the email itself says, see attached documents for the above caption job. They are the method statement, risk assessment, and emergency response plan. You see that? Mm-hmm. So this would have been an email following the request for these documents earlier on in the day. Okay. I want to take you now to 10200. So 10,200 of that bundle. $10200. It's a document you would have seen previously, Commissioner. So, Mr. Farrar, I'm suggesting to you that this is the method statement. This is LMCS's method statement, in fact, prepared by you, which accompanied the email on that day. Have a look at it.
Yeah.
This is document prepared by you?
Correct.
All right. And the top of that method statement talks about entry into the riser pipeline to retrieve 3 scuba tanks.
Correct,
Yes?
yeah.
And I'm suggesting to you that this method statement, as outlined there, is really about the retrieval of equipment, not divers.
Correct.
Yes? Okay, good. And similarly, the risk assessment which was done is at page 10198 of that bundle. You were involved in the preparation of this risk assessment?
Correct.
And this, I'm suggesting to you that this risk assessment was also the risk assessment that accompanied the email.
Correct.
And this risk assessment, I'm suggesting to you that when you look at it, is essentially about a risk assessment to retrieve equipment, not divers.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Are you seeing anything in this document that expressly speaks about the rescue of divers? I'm suggesting to you, actually, that nothing in the document deals with specifically the rescue of divers.
At that point in time,
No.
Paria.
I'm not asking about that point in time. I'm asking about the document.
Could you repeat the question?
There's nothing in this document that expressly treats with the rescue of divers.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Can you direct us to what portion of the document you're looking at?
Well, it gives you the risk assessment based on a diving operation.
No, I'm not saying it's on a diving operation. We just looked at the method statement.
Right.
The method statement dealt with the retrieval of equipment, right? That plan to retrieve equipment involved the utilization of divers to go and retrieve the equipment.
Correct.
Good. I'm suggesting to you that this is a risk assessment which accompanies that method statement.
Correct.
Right. And I'm also suggesting to you that this risk assessment is a risk assessment done in relation to that method statement.
Correct.
Good. And therefore, it is not a risk assessment treating with the retrieval of the divers or the rescue of the divers. That's a better word.
Because at that point in time...
Mr. Farrar, I'm not asking about the time. I'm asking about the... Will you accept? If you don't want to accept it, that's fine.
I don't accept it.
Okay, good.
But I'd like to hear what he has to say about that. What do you say, Liz?
So at that point in time, Paria's main concern for us not to dive in the pipeline was because there was obstructions in the pipeline. So they told us to do a risk assessment and methodology to retrieve the bottles that were obstructed us from doing the dive, which is what we did.
For what purpose?
So they can then send down a camera that would be able to travel further than the obstructions that they encountered the day before.
So, so what Mr. Mutu is saying is right. This is not to do with rescuing divers specifically.
Correct.
You weren't going to be pulling out a diver. But let me understand this. What you were doing is providing a risk assessment and a program for retrieval of 3 scuba tanks.
Correct.
Yes. Are we to take it then that if you encountered a person down there, you would leave them there?
No.
Right. So, so that I'm clear, the 3 scuba tanks were the obstruction for a camera to be able to go further into the pipe.
Correct.
You provided this assessment to send divers into the pipe to try and retrieve bottles.
Correct.
Yes. Well, I don't suppose they're particularly expensive, those bottles, so it can't be for the value in the bottle. And it was in order to provide access to the pipe.
Correct.
Either by camera or perhaps later on, if somebody was still alive, a person.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
I want to suggest to you that at the time this risk assessment was done and sent, the purpose was of retrieving this equipment was because LMCS and Paria were of the view at that time that the lives had been lost. That's the first thing I want to suggest to you.
Right. Well, let him answer that
Yes.
first.
Yes?
No, definitely not.
Can I be clear, please,
Yes.
Mr. Mutu? Is the suggestion that Paria were prepared to allow divers to go into the pipe to retrieve bottles, but not men?
Correct.
You're saying that your instructions are that this assessment was designed to allow men to go in this pipe to retrieve 3 bottles?
My instructions are that LMCS was repeatedly, at that point in time, asking for permission to go into the pipe because, 1, they were of the view that lives had been lost, and 2, that the bodies had to be retrieved, and in order to retrieve those bodies in a humane manner, the obstructions had to be removed. And Kazim Ali was of that view. And in fact, on the evidence, on the audio evidence, which is before the commission, he says that. And Paria's position is not that they were sending men into the pipe, but Paria's position is that at all times it was open to entertaining any risk assessment or any plan that anyone had in relation to the pipe. But they were not prepared to allow anyone to go in there in a way which was unsafe.
Right.
So they were open to hearing all possibilities, but they wanted it properly documented.
I think I understand you.
Yes.
What you're saying is that whether then or at any other time, whether to retrieve scuba tanks or anything else, they wanted this sort of documentation, risk assessment and method statement in advance.
At minimum, yes.
As a minimum.
Yes.
Right. And you say that the purpose of this was in order to retrieve scuba tanks. Was this done at your client's behest?
No.
No. This is being done at Mr. Kazim Ali's behest.
Yes.
Is it? Right.
They had an earlier meeting in the day. As you will appreciate, events had moved on significantly since Friday. Persons were concerned about the lives being lost, and Paria was very concerned at that time to try and be as humane as they could have been in this circumstances.
Right. Well, you can make speech later on, but what I do want to understand about this, though, the Paria were prepared to entertain a diver or divers going into the pipe on Sunday to retrieve a number of bottles so that wouldn't interfere with the bodies that they believed were now dead being removed from the pipe, being damaged in any way.
I think that's a subset of the general position, which is Paria at all times was prepared to entertain persons going into the pipe
you said,
provided that it could be shown that it can be done in a safe manner, for whatever purpose.
do you have instructions as to whether or not this was regarded as safe?
No, I don't, but I can take instructions.
Helpful to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
So coming back to, and this is the last aspect of your evidence I want to deal with. I want to suggest to you that when you say at paragraph 62 of your witness statement that Paria wanted LMCS to do a method statement and a risk assessment for a rescue operation, that is incorrect, because that's not what LMCS was contemplating at the time. You're free to reject it.
I reject.
Good.
What did you say?
He rejects it.
You reject it.
Yes. So I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you, Mr. Farrar.
Thank you, Mr. Mutu. Ms. Prasad Miraj. Is it Miraj or Maharaj?
Mirage, please.
Miraj. I thought so. Everyone kept telling me it was Maharaj, but it's Mirage, isn't it?
Everyone else is wrong.
And I'm blaming everybody else anyway, right? Okay, so it's Prasad Miraj.
Yes,
okay.
please. Mr. Farrar, I'll take you back to paragraph 60 of your witness statement.
The supplementary or the
supplemental,
original? The
yes.
supplementary.
Right. In that paragraph, this is in relation to the meeting on the 27th of
Can't
February.
hear you.
This is in relation to the meeting on the 27th of February, Sunday the 27th of February. At paragraph 60, confirm that the purpose, this is what you have. Can you kindly confirm that the purpose of the meeting was to tell them being Paria,
Paria.
of our plan and convince them at least give us one chance to make a rescue attempt? So just for clarification in relation to the meetings and the preparation of the documentation that followed the first meeting, what was your understanding of your intention in relation to the meeting that you attended?
To convince them to do a rescue.
Right. But then you prepared documents in relation to retrieval of bottles. Can you explain why that came to be?
Yeah, I believe they would have told us that we could not do the rescue because they were unsure of the conditions in the pipeline, and the only way for them to reach further past the bottles were to get them removed. So they asked us to do a dive plan to retrieve the bottles from the pipeline.
Great. So I'd just like to ask you a few things to clarify what you've said earlier. You were the dive supervisor in relation to this project.
Correct.
On the 25th. There was another supervisor for the works on the 25th at Bird 6,
Correct.
and that would have been Kazim Ali Jr.
Correct.
In answer to questions posed to you, said it was unfortunate that he was in the chamber at the time of the incident. Just for clarification, you've already have it in your statement. Just for clarification, can you explain what you mean by that so that we understand it? Was he always in the chamber?
No. He was
Where
not.
was he stationed?
Alongside the barge.
All right, so he wasn't
That's
always
no.
in the chamber with the men. And in relation to best practice, you have agreed with Ms. Alfonso that it may have been best practice to have a harness with the extension at topside. You recall that?
Yeah.
Right. Now, not in relation to best practice, but in relation to what actually occurred on the day in question, the Delta P as we now know it to be. Would you accept that that would have been best practice at that time of that incident?
No.
Could you care to explain in your words why that would not have been?
Well, if they had a tagline attached to them, that could have got caught up on their neck while they were making their way into the pipeline and could have resulted in
Further danger.
further injury.
All right. I think that's all, please, Mr. Commissioner.
Well, I'm afraid I have a few questions for you. Can I deal, first of all, with a question asked by Mr. Piggis? He's the gentleman sitting in the middle there. And you remember he took you to the document that is the scope of works, and took you to a number of different sections in that, and inviting you to say it was LMCS's responsibility to supervise the works. And I don't think there's any dispute that it was your responsibility to supervise the works. I want to understand if anybody else had any similar responsibilities. All right, so can I, and a couple of other things as well, but can I just ask you to have that document, please? It's at page 558 of the bundle. And I want to ask you, please, to look first of all at paragraph 3.1.12 and 3.1.21. So those two. Let's look at 12 first. So I want to ask you about it. This is describing the works that were to be carried out as drafted by Paria, correct?
Correct.
It says there, cut, insert migration barrier and install a 30-inch flange onto the existing line. Inspection requirement for the flange, 100% PT, including route passes, VT and hydro test. I don't pretend to understand half of that, but it probably doesn't matter for my purposes. What it says after that is this: note, video stream to be provided topside during work activity for Paria's representative. Did you provide such a video stream during the work activity for Paria's representative?
We did.
You did. Did they avail themselves of it?
They did.
Over at paragraph 3.1.21, the contractor, that's you, yes, shall supply video footage during the subsea works. That's what you were doing on that day, subsea works.
Correct.
And this video must form part of the handover package. Did you understand that?
No, I was not my part of the job.
No, but you understood that it needed to be recorded.
No.
You didn't? And that's what it says, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't hand over a video package at the end of the job if you haven't recorded it.
No, I was never told to record it.
Nobody ever told you that?
No.
Nobody at LMCS?
No.
Or at Paria?
Not even, no.
Anyone?
No.
So you didn't?
No.
Could you have?
Yeah.
Paragraph 4, please. Page 570. Mr. Peggers asked you if there was any obligation on Paria to, if you could find anywhere in the document, any obligation on Paria to, as it were, supervise or monitor in any way. Can I just ask you to have a look at 4.1, please? Supply personnel for organising all work permits and certificates, monitoring contractors' performance and work standards. How did you understand that Paria would monitor contractors' performance and work standards?
They would be on site and supervising the job.
Or looking at it, at least.
Yeah, correct.
How else would they know? Who was doing that?
They had, as I said, they had a couple guys from Paria, Kenson, that were on the berth, that were popping by and looking at the video from time to time, but I can't recall who they are or what positions they hold in the company.
To carry on that paragraph, it says approving work done by the contractor. So they had to approve the work you've done, and carrying out quality assurance audits. Right. Yes. Right. I don't think I need to trouble you with any more of that. Now, I do want to ask you a little about what Mr. Mutu was asking you, because you'll recall that he took you through a litany of potential problems that you, or he was suggesting, you might not have considered when assessing whether there was a proper plan to rescue these men. You remember he was asking you a number of questions before we had our lunch break, all right? And I want to ask you a little about that, because he sought to confine your the questions about that to the first plan that you had, all right? And I'm going to call it Plan 1, 2, and 3, so that I have a clear understanding of what you're saying, all right? Plan 1 was, is set out at paragraph 26 of your statement. So can we have that up, please? Plan 1, the rescue plan which we devised was that A, I was going to enter into the riser with an extra set of diving gear so that if I found anyone, I could provide it to them to assist them to take them back up. Yes? B, I would have I would have had connected to me a tagline which I would have used to communicate with topside in the habitat, Dexter, who would assist to pull me back up to the riser. And C, I would enter feet first. All right? Now, can I just understand what was happening? This is pre-Boudram.
Pre, yeah.
So at this stage, did you know whether the men were in the pipe or not?
I had a fair idea that they were.
Well, that's why I ask you, did you know? You didn't know, did you?
No.
No. You suspected?
Suspected.
Or believed, or some other such adjective, but you couldn't have known for sure. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. Were you, nonetheless, prepared to risk your own life to see if they were in there?
I was.
Did you understand that that was a significant risk?
I do.
Especially, as has been pointed out to you very fairly by Mr. Mutu, that there were a number of issues which either you didn't consider or ignored. Do you agree?
Possibly. But
I mean,
at that time...
Almost certainly, isn't it?
I was willing to go and attempt a rescue.
Yes. All right. Well, you could perhaps understand why you weren't wholeheartedly welcomed in attempting such a rescue by those who are responsible for the site. You can understand that, can't you?
Completely.
All right. That's coupled with the fact that when you were first seen after this, almost immediately after it had happened, you were yourself distraught, weren't you? You were laying flat on your back on the barge with your hands over your head, clearly upset.
Correct.
Was that born of the fact that you thought they may have died?
Correct.
And how close were these men to you?
Very, very close.
So perhaps we can all understand why you might have been a little distraught. But what I want to ask you is whether any of the matters that have been identified by Mr. Mutu in his examination of you were considered later. Do you follow me? There were two other plans that you formulated when other divers had arrived, were there not?
Yep, correct.
In your plan number 2, which is set out in your paragraph 37 and 38, this is now post Boudram coming out, all right? So the plan changed. First of all, can I ask you this? When Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe, did that change your attitude? Bearing in mind it's now 2+ hours, 2.5 hours after they first disappeared. Did it change people's attitude about whether they were still alive or not?
It did, yeah.
Did it or didn't it?
It did.
Yes. Did it give you new hope?
Definitely.
Did you collect yourself by then? Were you less distraught?
I was, yeah.
Right. Now, in effecting a plan number 2, were there other divers present?
There were, yeah.
Did Mr. Conan Beddoe arrive?
He did.
Who is Conan Beddoe?
He is a commercial diver that I work with as well.
Commercial diver like you, or better qualified than
Well,
you?
he is a saturation qualified diver,
I don't know what saturation qualified diver means. What does that mean?
where you live in a chamber and you're
permanently under pressure.
Yeah.
Right, so that you can go from one job to the next without having to come back to the surface, or
Correct.
at surface pressure anyway. All right. So he, would you say, was as experienced as it gets?
He was.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Did you have confidence in him?
I did.
Did Mr. Kazim Ali have confidence in him?
He did.
Was he prepared when he arrived to help?
He was.
What did he say? What was the approach taken by him with you?
Well, I explained to him what happened, and he then told me that he would go into the chamber to make his own assessment, along with Michael and Raleigh.
Who's Ronald
Ramuta.
Ramuta. And who is he?
He is another diver,
Qualified diver?
qualified. Yeah.
Like you?
Commercial- Yeah,
Commercial diver?
commercial diver.
Good diver? You
Very
know
good.
him?
Yep,
Have you dived with him?
many times before.
As good as you? Better than you?
Better than me.
Right. Did you have confidence in him?
I did.
Did you formulate a plan between him and Mr. Beddoe,
We did, yep.
built around your original plan or
Yeah,
changed?
No, same plan, using scuba, except Conan would have been going into the pipeline.
Right. So you're not now going to go into the pipeline. Dexter's no longer involved, is he?
He was on the top side.
Right.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually effecting a rescue, who was it going to involve this time?
It would have been Conan, Michael, Ronald, Corey, and myself.
5 divers.
5.
Who were going to be standbys?
Conan would have been in the pipeline, Michael, Corey, and Ronald would have been standby.
And what would you have been doing?
I would have been on the top supervising.
Right. So that was a plan that you formulated, and it still necessitated using scuba equipment, is that right?
Yep.
You say he went and made an assessment of his own, that's Mr. Beddoe.
Yeah.
At that time, you'd obviously learnt what you could from Mr. Boudram. Had Michael Kurban been into the pipe?
He was. Yeah.
Sorry?
He was in the pipeline.
So did he come back and tell you anything that he had learnt from being in the pipeline?
No, he just told me that he went down and he reached maybe about 10 feet past the elbow, and he retrieved one dive tank.
What was he using when he went down?
He was using the hooker connected to a scuba tank.
A hooker. That's a long tube
right.
with the ordinary mouthpiece.
Yeah,
Yes? So free into the mouth, not part of a mask, free into the mouth, is that right?
correct.
And so he went down with a tube that was connected ultimately to a tank or some other air source
Correct.
at the surface,
In the chamber.
in the chamber.
Yeah.
And he went down, so he was able to tell you conditions inside the pipe
Yeah,
and to tell Mr. Beddoe conditions inside the pipe.
correct.
So you were asked a number of questions about what might or might not have been considered by you. By then, had you considered whether the accident was a Delta P or not? By this time, this second plan?
Yeah,
Yes? Did you discuss it at all with Mr. Beddoe?
I did.
And what was his view about it?
But I explained to him that in order for the chamber to blow back down, that everything should have been equalized and that it should not occur again.
What was his view?
He said, all right. He was willing to enter the pipe.
If you had, given that you now had considered Delta P as being the cause, did it enter your minds at all that there might be some potential latent Delta P still in existence?
At that point in time, no.
Because you thought it had equalized.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
You were asked about oil, and that would affect both toxicity and visibility, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Mr. Boudram had been in the pipe for how long?
I believe maybe close to 2 hours.
Yes, I think perhaps a little more, but there or thereabouts. Did he have a mask when he came out?
No.
And did he have any mouthpiece when he came out?
No.
He was covered in oil.
Covered in oil.
And were you able to ascertain from Michael Kerban, who had been down to the elbow and some 10 feet or so past it, as to what the visibility was like?
He said it was water. He had visibility.
He had visibility.
Yeah.
Of course, you could have torches. Did you have torches?
We did.
There were, we're told, scuba tanks in the actual pipeline itself. We know that there were. Did you regard that as being a problem in terms of rescue by the time you were taking this second dive?
No.
Did you consider it even?
No.
No. Did Mr. Boudram come out with a tank?
He came up with a tank, but I believe when Raleigh pulled him out, he would have left the tank in the pipeline.
Did Michael Kerban come out with a tank?
He came out with a tank, yeah.
He brought one out, did he?
Brought one out.
Given that you've got a 30-inch pipe, I mean, you say you can turn around in it. I think I might quite like to see that. But in a 30-inch pipe, would it be possible to get past the tank?
Definitely.
Did you consider whether the tanks might have provided a life source for those that were in the pipe?
It could have, yeah.
You were asked whether you considered the inflatable plug. Did you know where the plug was before the accident happened?
Before, yeah.
Right. And if you had considered delta P to be the problem that had caused this, where would the plug be? Which side of the people would the plug be?
Below.
Below or past them?
Oh,
Would the plug be between you, at the riser 6, and the people that were down there, or the other side of them?
You're talking about after the
After the
incident?
accident, yes.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Where would the plug be?
In front
Of them?
of them.
Yeah. But not between you and them?
No.
Did you consider that?
No, I knew that the plug would have been the first thing to enter the pipeline.
You knew that?
I knew that.
All right. Apparently, there was a cable attached to it. Did that cause you any concern that there might be a cable attached to it and that you might be, as Mr. Mutu puts it, snagged by it or caught up in it in some way?
No.
Did you even consider it?
No.
And you consider it now, would you please? Would that stop you going into effect a rescue?
Definitely
that
not.
existed as a possibility?
It would not stop me.
Do you think it should?
No.
He asked you also to consider the mental state of the divers who were in the pipe. And the first thing I want to ask you is this, is how long have they been diving, these men?
Over 10 years.
Experienced divers?
Yeah.
Do you have any training at all, even in the most basic forms of PADI training, what to do if there is an emergency underwater, breathing shallowly, taking not too rapid breaths, things of that kind? Is there a sort of understanding or training about that?
Yeah.
There is?
Well, if once you do your PADI course, you would learn
even the basic PADI course?
What to do and what not to do as a diver.
And whilst they may not be exactly happy about being down there, did you think that it was likely to be a problem? And it's not an unfair point that Mr. Mutu makes, is it? That they might be a bit panicky, thinking they're stuck in a pipe.
They would be.
And I want to ask you in respect to that, you had, I think, formulated in your mind that you were going to go in feet first. Is that right?
Yeah.
Did you know which way they were in the pipe?
Yeah, I do.
How?
From Christopher.
Right. What had he told you about that?
He told me that they were all making their way back toward, well, at that point in time, he wasn't sure which direction they were going, but he said that he was dragging, I believe it was Kazim Jr.
We've heard it as a chain, he described. Did he tell you that? Or did you know that?
No, he didn't tell me that there was a chain, but he told me that all of them were making their way back towards the elbow.
Because if you're going feet first and the others were in the pipe head first, you'd only touch feet to feet, wouldn't you?
You would.
That would be a problem, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Did you consider that?
At that point in time, no.
All right. The seventh point he made to you was this was a confined space. Well, a pipe is a confined space. Was that a problem as far as you were concerned?
No.
Or indeed any of the other divers who were offering to go into the pipe?
No, it wasn't a problem.
He asked you, before I interrupted him, whether there was any means of verbal communication. And at that stage, this is now Plan 2. Were there any facilities at Plan 2 for verbal communication? There's a third plan, when I think people did arrive with such equipment, but not at that stage.
No.
Am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
So if you were to formulate this Plan 2 with Mr. Beddoe and others, how were you going to communicate with each other? Did you work out how you would communicate with each other once somebody went into that pipe?
Tagline.
A tagline?
Tagline, yeah.
Various pulls?
Yeah.
Had you described to each other what one pull would mean, or two, or three? Or had you worked that out?
Yep.
Between you?
Yeah.
And was everybody happy with that arrangement?
They were.
Right. The next arrangement or issue that he raised was poor visibility. Well, of course, it would have been not ideal, would it? Although you knew someone had come out the pipe and you knew that Mr. Kerban had gone into it. Did you have torches, as I think you told me you already did?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Well, obviously oil can impair visibility, but you would have had masks, wouldn't you?
Correct.
He asked you something about fatigue management, but since I don't know what it is, I'm not going to ask you about it either. But I imagine it's becoming exhausted or something of that kind. I'll simply ask you about adrenaline. Is that something that might have kicked in?
Definitely.
Yeah, all right. We've taken a little time, and forgive me for doing so, because Mr. Mutu also took some time, and I want to say, not unreasonably, questioning the things that you should and properly ought to have considered, and no doubt which others were considering. What I want to know from you, please, is if you had had to put all of those matters in some sort of writing and address them in some sort of way, by way of a risk assessment, how long would that take you to do?
Very long.
Did you regard the position that you were in when Mr. Boudram came out of that pipe as being something which you had to act with a degree of speed, if not haste?
I do.
Why?
Well, we had divers trapped in a pipeline. They did not have they were a limited amount of air. So
Did you have any idea how much air they had?
No.
Was time, therefore, of the essence?
Definitely.
After you had formulated this new plan with Mr. Beddoe, post Mr. Boudram coming out of the pipe, was that plan conveyed to anybody at Paria?
I can't recall.
You didn't, anyway.
We were already in the water.
No, I appreciate it, but you didn't.
No.
No, all right. When you were in the water, as you say, about to effect this plan, was it just you in the water, or were there others?
No, I was on the boat.
Right. They were in the water.
They were in the water.
Who's they?
Conan, Michael,
Mr. Beddoe, Michael Kerban,
Rolly.
And Rolly. Do you know his surname?
Which one?
Rolly. Ramnahan.
Ramuta.
Ramuta,
Yeah.
right. So the three of them were already in the water, were they?
They were.
And what happened when they were in the water about to effect this plan?
At that point in time, the Coast Guard came to me and requested that I get the divers out of the water.
You need to speak a little closer to that microphone. The Coast Guard came to you. Can you remember who it was?
No.
Anyway, a Coast Guard,
Coast Guard, yeah.
said to you what?
That I need to get the divers out of the water.
You needed to get them out of the water.
Yeah.
Why did he say that? Did you ask him why?
At that point in time, he said that he received instructions from Paria to get all the divers out of the water.
He told you that he had received instructions from Paria. You hadn't received any such instructions from Paria.
Yeah, I did.
At that time?
Yeah, at that time.
Who?
But I disobeyed.
From whom?
Can't recall exactly.
Well, there was a lady on the barge and a gentleman, wasn't there?
Catherine was there, but I'm not sure if she was there at that point in time. I
Right.
can't recall.
So it wasn't her?
I can't recall.
All right. Well, anyway, somebody you said. But
Somebody.
who was the first person to say to you, take the divers or get the divers out of the water?
Paria personnel.
Paria personnel. What did the Coast Guard say?
At that point in time,
Yes.
nothing. They
All
weren't.
right, you've got me a little confused now, because I thought you said to me that the three of the men were in the water, about to
So you're
effect the
talking
plan.
about, when you said the first time, I'm talking about this was from plan.
This is plan number 2 we're on.
Okay,
right?
plan number 2.
Mr. Mutu was asking you all about plan number 1. I'm asking you about plan number 2. All right? And these 3 men, Beddo, Rolly, and Michael, were in the water,
Right.
about to effect plan number 2 that you've described to us,
Right,
all right?
okay.
And
Well,
I thought you said that the Coast Guard had asked you to
so yes,
ask
for
them to
plan-
get out of the water.
For plan number 2, it was the Coast Guard.
Right. So let's just stick with that. The Coast Guard asked you to get them out of the water, not Paria.
Not Paria.
Right. So, and did you ask them why?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said that he received instructions that they had to get us out of the water, and I asked him why. He said that he couldn't tell me exactly why. At that point in time, we had to come out of the water.
Did you tell them that were in the water to come out?
I did.
Were they all above surface, or
They
were
were
some?
in the chamber.
They were already in the chamber. How were you able
Right.
to tell them?
I sent Corey. Corey was at the surface of the water. So I instructed him to go and tell the divers that they
Corey
had to
was
come
at the
out.
surface, in the water, but on the surface. All right. And did they come out?
They did.
A little while later, a further, or a number of other divers arrived. I want to have some sort of idea, please, of timing. So this plan number 2, when this was happening, these men were in the water about to effect it, and the Coast Guard's telling them to get out of the water, and they do. What sort of time was that? And do it by how long it was after Mr. Boudram came out.
I think it might have been between 6 o'clock and 6:30.
Right.
Yeah.
So some hours anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Plan number 3, that was formulated according to your evidence when a man by the name of Conran, he arrived, did he? Who's he?
He is another commercial diver,
Experienced commercial diver?
very experienced,
Better than you?
better than me.
Did he arrive with additional equipment?
He did.
And did this equipment include the sort of equipment that Mr. Mutu was asking about, verbal communication equipment,
It did.
so that divers could now go in with commercial diving equipment into the pipe and be able to speak to those on the surface?
Correct?
Did you tell anybody from Paria that you now had this capability?
Catherine.
You told Catherine. Did you ask her, did you make an adjustment, therefore, to the plan number 2 that you'd had to
did.
accommodate this new equipment?
We did.
Did the new equipment also include facial masks?
It did, yeah.
You wouldn't be able to talk otherwise, would you? It must be a complete mask over the face, of a lightweight type that I think Miss Alfonso was trying to extract from you.
Well, Wouldn't have been lightweight, but
It was a facial mask anyway, and so that you could communicate. And did that mask have a hose that was going to supply air from the surface?
it did.
How long was that hose?
300 feet.
300 feet. So it would have allowed anybody who was willing to have gone down by the 60 or 70 feet to the bottom, and then along by some 200 odd feet. Yes?
Yeah,
Did you explain that to Miss Balkasoon?
I did.
And did you say that you had these experienced commercial divers willing to do it?
I did.
Were they willing to do it?
They were.
What was Miss Balkasoon's response?
That she had to receive instructions from Colin Piper.
Right. Did you get an impression whether she thought this might work?
I can't say.
All right. But in any event, she spoke to Mr. Piper. Do you know if she spoke to him or not?
I can't say.
Did she make a phone call?
I'm sure she would have.
You didn't see her do it?
No.
Or hear what she was saying?
Oh, yeah.
All right. In any event, did there ever come a time, when you were permitted to effect any kind of rescue, given the number of people that you had there?
Yeah.
Did there ever come a time?
That we were permitted?
Yes.
No.
And was there something more that you would have liked to have had in an ideal world? Is there something more by way of equipment that you would have liked to have had in order to effect this rescue?
No.
Is there anything else that we could have had?
Nope.
Yes, thank you. Well, I recognise I've taken quite a bit of time dealing with those issues, and anybody else who wants to ask a question arising from that will be permitted to do so. Does anybody else want to? I see, Mr. Mutu, you have your light on. I'll come to you last, if I may. Does anybody else wish to ask anything? No. Mr. Mutu, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you. The Commissioner's just asked you a series of questions, and you've given a series of answers. None of that is set out in any of your witness statements. Is that correct?
I can't say that right now.
Okay, to the best of your
To
recollection.
the best of my recollection.
It's not.
No.
Right. You, so I can understand this process. You submitted a first witness statement, and
Can you raise your voice slightly,
Yes.
Mr. Mutu, please?
After you submitted a first witness statement, you help me with this because I'm not sure. You came into the commission, and did you subject yourself to an interview process?
I did.
Yeah. And that process produced the second statement. How long was that process?
What, the interview itself?
Yes.
Maybe 2 to 3 hours.
Okay. And the information that's in your second witness statement, that's information that you volunteered when you came in, or it was a product of a question and answer?
Question
and answer sequence. And when you came in for that process, I imagine you were asked about the details of your various plans. Is that correct?
I can't recall.
But help me, if you can, the witness statement which came following that interview process is a witness statement in which you spoke extensively about the rescue plans. Am I right?
I believe so.
Yeah, because in the first one you didn't.
Right.
And in fact, as I read it, would you agree with me that a substantial part, if not the vast majority, of your second statement deals with the rescue plan, the development of the plans, and so on? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.